Early Childhood Education Institute. And along with 3 colleagues today, I'm going to describe the Tulsa SEED study and ask for your help and support with the study. I want to make sure that everyone knows that we're recording, and the purpose of the recording is to share this information with any colleagues who weren't able to join us today. And I also wanted to just make a reminder about Zoom protocol that if you're not speaking, it's best to mute. And with that, I'll tell you who my 3 colleagues are who will be speaking today along with me. They are Dr. Deborah Phillips of Georgetown University. She's been a collaborator on the study since we started it in 2016. April Derricks, who is a colleague of mine at the Early Childhood Education Institute, and she is the project manager, so she is the best point of contact for this study. And last but not least is Janet McKenzie, who is a retired TPS teacher who's been an advocate and major helper with the study since we began it back in 2016. And we only have a half an hour, so we'll be sure to close the meeting at 2 o'clock. And at that point, we'll talk about the raffle of the 3 iPads and how that will be handled. Let me start with just a little bit of information, the basic information about the study, which is called the SEED study. And SEED stands for School Experiences and Early Development. As I mentioned, we've been working on this study since 2016, and it's a longitudinal study, which means we collected a large group of children and we're following those children over time. And we started with many of the children when they were 3 and enrolled in various preschool programs across Tulsa. When those 3-year-olds turned 4, many of them enrolled in Tulsa public pre-K, and we, in fact, even recruited more children at that point. And then the following year, when the children were 5, we recruited some additional kindergarten-age children to be in the study. So altogether, we have about 1,000 children in the study that we are planning to follow through the end of grade 4. So it makes it a large longitudinal study that really looks at children's growth and development over time. And our study children are now entering grade 2, and that is why we wanted to meet with you today to talk about securing your help with conducting the study this year. So in terms of our agenda for today, in a minute, we'll talk a little bit more about the background of the study and why it's important and what the purpose of the study is. We'll also review the study timeline and what data we plan to collect and what we will be asking of you in terms of your help with the study. And as I said at the end, we will have the raffle as a way to thank you for participating in the meeting today. But before we go any further, I'm going to introduce my colleague, Dr. Deborah Phillips, and she will give you more information about the context and background and purpose of the study.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really honored to be here and to be able to talk with all of you who are finally being recognized as the essential workers that you truly are in our society. Since 2001, I've been engaged in studying the developmental impacts of Tulsa's pre-K program. Why Tulsa? Mainly because Tulsa was actually a very early adopter of universal pre-K. And at the time, you also had a very courageous school superintendent who was willing to let investigators from Georgetown University come into Tulsa and look at the effectiveness of the pre-K program at the time. I also just want to say this is when I first met the McKenzies, which was a real wonderful side benefit of being involved with this work. My colleague Bill Gormley and I studied actually 3 cohorts of preschoolers early in the 2000s, and we found very strong impacts of of being exposed to pre-K education on math and language learning, as well as social skills at the end of the pre-K year. This was especially true for lower income children and dual language learners. We also found that Tulsa actually provided higher quality teacher-child interactions and instruction than did other state pre-K programs across the country. So this really put Tulsa on the map as the crown jewel of the United States pre-K system. President Obama actually mentioned Tulsa pre-K in his State of the Union address. I believe it was in 2011, I'm not sure, but it was very exciting. As we moved into the next decade, the field and policymakers began to ask new questions. Notably, do these short-term effects of pre-K last? Are they sustained or do they fade out? So we actually followed through administrative data the children in our earlier cohorts, and we found that by the time the children reached middle school, those who had attended pre-K actually had higher math test scores, reduced grade retention, and reduced chronic absenteeism. Very powerful and meaningful impacts. My colleague Bill Gormley is actually continuing to follow these children to look at impacts through high school graduation, so stay tuned. Now the question is, what is it in Tulsa that has produced these sustained impacts? What is it about the elementary school environments in particular that keep these children on such strong learning and developmental trajectories? So we are now involved in the SEED study with my colleague at Georgetown, Professor Anna Johnson, and with Diane and the ECEI team at OU-Tulsa to do another study to really look at what are these kind of magic ingredients, if you will, that happen in pre-K, K, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, that really keeps these children moving along such promising pathways. Due to changes in the childhood population since we first started doing this work, and in the science of early care and education, as well as knowing that we are doing this work in the context of shamefully enduring achievement disparities, we decided to focus on low-income children this time and make sure that we had a large sample of dual language learners that we are following. And in consultation with the TPS leadership, we decided to focus on not only learning outcomes, but also outcomes that we refer to as self-regulation or executive functioning. These are children's capacities to pay attention, to remember, to sit still and listen, not to get distracted, to control their emotions, all these kinds of facets of development that really enable children to function productively in the classroom, in learning with teachers and with peers. So as Diane said, we actually started with a sample of 3-year-olds who are now arriving in your classrooms, such as they are, and we are spending our time working with you and the children's parents and our own research team to document the children's school and home experiences as they develop across, grade to grade in Tulsa. It's also important for you to know that in the survey that you'll be hearing more about in a moment, we also have worked very hard to give you all voice so that we do ask you about your own circumstances, your own rewards, your own challenges. And in fact, the first 2 papers that we have published from this study talk about the role of teachers and how important you are, what you worry about, what is helpful to you. So that's a very important facet of this study as well. So I'll stop there. I just want to thank you. And I want to thank all of your earlier colleagues in the younger grade levels for making this study possible.
Thank you, Deborah. Now my colleague April Derricks, who is the project coordinator for the SEED study, will talk about some details related to the study.
Hello, I'm April, and I help coordinate all of the data collectors who will be working with you all for this study. So here we have a timeline of our study components, and we have followed a similar timeline for all previous years of our study. And of course, for this year, there have been some adjustments as to when we start different pieces. And I also want to just note that some of the items we have listed on this planned data collection for winter and spring may change or reduce. But it's important for us to inform you today of all the possible study components so that we don't have to come back and ask you for additional consent for those items later. So each fall, we schedule a meeting like this to inform the grade level teachers about the study and to obtain their consent. We also ask teachers to rate children's behaviors and skills in an online survey. And then in the fall, we also collect direct child assessments. And this year we were asked to wait until the second quarter. And then we also know that you all will be going through a transition in the month of November with some children moving to in-person. And so our plan for this year is to start collecting child assessment data in December. And I'll go into that a little bit more in just a moment. In the winter time, we collect classroom observation data. At this time, partners such as us are not allowed into the school buildings, and so if that continues through the year, then data collection on classroom experiences may shift to a videotape model. In the winter, we also collect an annual parent survey. And then in the spring, we typically repeat child assessments. We have a question mark next to that just because we're starting our first time point a little bit later, and we're not sure if those will be repeated in the spring or if we'll just have one time point through the winter. In the spring, we also repeat the teacher ratings of children's behaviors and skills, and then we also collect a teacher well-being survey about your own experiences. And then the summer is the time that we clean and analyze all of that data and create briefs and conference and paper proposals to share with our partners. So next I'm going to go into a little bit more detail in each of these components and what we are asking of teachers. So first I'm going to go through the survey components of the study. For these survey components, you'll want to look out for either my name, April Derricks, or my assistant study coordinator, Hannah Lee. Will be the primary people sending emails, and we try to make it really clear in the subject line, OU Seed Study Teacher Survey or OU Seed Study Child Ratings. And so we try to make it really easy for you to see those things in your inbox. We collect survey data from teachers and parents to obtain a variety of perspectives on children's development. Our teacher well-being surveys that Deborah mentioned, they will ask you about your personal and classroom challenges and supports. So today you will be asked a few short items along with the study consent about your well-being during distance learning. And then the full teacher well-being survey will be distributed in the spring, and that comes with a $30 gift card incentive for completing that survey. A separate online survey is used for teachers to rate children's self-regulatory, academic, and social-emotional skills twice per year. And so we plan to send out the fall time point for those child ratings starting November 2nd. So you'll get a personal link in your email that has your list of study participants in your classroom, and we'll be collecting those through the month of November. We were hoping that time of intercession would be a good time for you to reflect on children's skills and behaviors during distance learning. There'll also be some options on that survey for you to rate how well you feel you know the children. We know that there are some students who you may have had very little interaction with in these first couple of months, and so we have accounted for that in those child rating surveys. The child ratings come with a gift card incentive that's scaled based on how many participants you have in your classroom. Some classrooms will have 12 to 15 study participants and others will have just a few, so we scale the gift cards based on how much time it will take teachers, and we estimate that that will be less than 10 minutes per child. And then we also survey parents annually about their well-being and to document any changes in family challenges and supports. This year, we're also planning to ask parents to rate their children's executive function skills, since parents have been spending probably a little bit more time with their kids than usual. So parents also get a $30 gift card incentive for doing that survey, and we also give additional gift card incentives to teachers who encourage survey returns. So on a normal year, our first strategy is to send a text message or email directly to families with our survey link, and we have about 50% of our sample who are responsive to that communication, but we definitely need teacher support and help to increase that response rate. We know that a lot of you use things like Class Dojo or Remind or other apps that parents are checking more often, and so our teachers in past years have really helped us by sending our link to parents in a text message or by sending home paper copies in the backpack. So those are our survey components, and next I'm going to talk about our child assessments and observations. All of the parents of our study participants have consented for their child to be assessed through 4th grade. We plan to do a soft opening of assessments in December, which is using a couple of schools at first. And we, based on feedback from the district and from the teachers we spoke to, we plan to use the asynchronous learning time on Wednesdays. Just as the learning modes shift, we know that Wednesdays will stay a little bit more stable in terms of what's going on that day. And so we are asking for your help and support to share our Zoom link to study participants for the child assessments. Our child assessments will be one 30-minute session per child. It'll be one child and one assessor. And so we definitely need your help to encourage families and just alert them about that event to log on at a certain time. We have several assessors, about 16 to 18, who can work simultaneously to complete these assessments. And so it'll just be one Zoom link. For example, if a school has 25 participants, then we would communicate on this Wednesday, we would like the participants from teacher A to log on at 9 a.m. and the participants from teacher B to log on at 10 a.m. And all of the students can use this Zoom link. We'll manage doing breakout rooms so that each child can go with an assessor. So Hannah and I will be the ones to email and communicate schedule, the exact day and time with each of your teams. And even though these assessments may be new for you and your team as teachers, since our children have been with us since 3 and 4 years old, they're starting to recognize our staff, and they're used to participating in these types of assessments with us. So they usually enjoy the one-on-one interaction that they get from doing assessments. And so next we have the classroom observation. So today we're asking for consent to a classroom observation, although we can't say exactly what that data collection will look like this year because there may be a shift to videotaped class sessions or samples of children's classroom experiences. Usually we go into the classroom for one full day and we document teacher-child interactions, peer interactions, and children's individual regulation and engagement with the learning activities. And so over the course of the study, we've been in 450 classrooms for over 2,000 hours of classroom observation. And so I say that just to ease any nerves about what we're looking for. We're really here just for research purpose and to understand what are those aspects of the classroom that are helping children to develop self-regulation skills. So we've spent a lot of hours in classrooms. We've seen all types of child behaviors, and so we're not there to look for district requirements or teacher evaluation or anything like that. In this slide, we wanted to share some pictures of our data collectors and our team so you know who will be doing this work. The ECI staff is comprised of about 40 people with specific training on working with young children, conducting assessments and classroom observations. Of our 40 staff, 23 have experience as a classroom teacher, and other staff have backgrounds as home visitors or family support roles. We also have 11 staff who speak Spanish, which allows us to communicate with families and to assess children in their home language. Our institute, we are the local evaluation partners for Tulsa Educare, and we also work with CAP Tulsa Head Start and the Oklahoma Early Childhood Program. We've collected data and given feedback to programs all across the state. And we also just wanted to share these pictures just to show that we're still working towards our goal of winning the group Halloween costume contest at OU-Tulsa. So just to summarize what this means for you, today we're asking for your participation in the teacher components of the study, such as the survey and the child ratings. We're also asking for your support and encouragement for participation of children and families from your class. Many of them recognize the study, but it has been going on for several years, and so sometimes it's just a good reminder to hear it from the teacher about the importance of the study. We're also asking just for open communication about the logistics at your school. We know that Wednesdays might look a little bit different at each site, and so we hope that you'll just help us to understand what the schedule looks like at your school site so that we can tailor our process for you. And also just to reach out if you need any support in completing any of the items. Janet has done so many amazing things to help support teachers to complete the surveys. For example, reading aloud a book to the class so the teacher has time to complete her reading. So we do everything we can to make it as seamless as possible for you to complete these study components.
Thank you, April. I just wanted to reinforce a few comments that April made and talk about how we use the data we collect and how we do not use the data we collect. So in terms of the information we collect, certainly we are researchers and we summarize the information in group summaries and use it to inform the research community. But we also feed information back to the district in terms of group summaries. So for instance, we work really hard to complement and not repeat the data that's already collected by TPS. And when we summarize information and share it back with your administrators, we do it at the overall group level or at the level of the ILD. And we can talk about things such as the effects of pre-K participation, what distance learning, how that has impacted children during COVID. We can talk about specific practices in elementary that are predictive of children's growth. We can share information about maybe additional resources that staff need to do their work. So we really strive to make the information useful to the district as well as to inform the larger field. We do not use our information for any type of accountability purposes or school or teacher evaluation. And we only share results and data at the group level in aggregate. We would never share any individual information on an individual child or teacher or school. So with that, Janet McKenzie, would you like to share some information?
I would. Can you hear me? Did I do that right?
We can hear you.
Oh, good. Hi, everybody. I want you to know that I've never been a part of a team that is as concerned about the teachers' well-being as they are about the students. These are delightful partners, and they are committed to sharing the teacher, the student, and the family experiences in the most meaningful way while doing all they can to make sure they're not making it harder on you. This study is focused on the very parts of children's growth and development that we have wished to be observed and recognized forever. Our researchers are doing something teachers have always hoped for. They're asking us. They are valuing what we have to offer. We have always known that we have so much to share if someone would just ask. And the SEED study team is asking, and they will be the ones to effectively share your input, and the collective input will be, or the impact will be profound. We all have a role to play in supporting children, and the goal is the same, but it is critical for your voice and your knowledge and expertise to be heard. You might not know the value you play in a study of this magnitude, but this team does. Please, please, please plan on partnering with us. Thanks.
Thank you, Janet. So Janet brought up partnering with us, and we do that through the process of consent. So as researchers, our research studies are reviewed by something called the Institutional Review Board, the IRB. And they're the body at a university that approves our study in terms of its procedures and protocols. And something they're particularly interested in is protecting the rights and dignity and privacy of the human subjects that participate in research. So our study has been approved by the OU IRB, and we're reaching out to you with our approved consent form that is really our pledge of how we will conduct the study and handle the information. So the consent form, which April is going to put the link to it in the chat box, summarizes the purpose and the components of the study. So it's really a written record of what April has reviewed on these slides today. We guarantee confidentiality, that we will keep the information private. And we hope that we have made you excited about the study and the contribution that Tulsa has already made to the educational literature, and how this study positions us to make even more contributions to the literature and to TPS in terms of how children are progressing over the elementary years. So April, is the link to the consent form in the chat box?
Yes, I just put it in the chat box. It's a Qualtrics survey.
Okay, thank you. So as we near the end of our time together, we want to thank you for taking time today to meet with us to learn about the study. We hope that you will consent, and you do that by signing the form that April has just put in the chat box. And to thank you for coming to the meeting today, we are offering a raffle of 3 iPads. And so your ticket for the raffle is really the return of that consent form. And I want to be clear that it's just the return of the form. We hope you agree to participate in the research. But even if you don't agree, please indicate that on the form and return it. And everybody who returns a form is eligible to be in the raffle for the iPads. So with that, our time is up, and I can stay on the call to answer any questions that people may have if you want to linger and ask any questions. But as we sign off, thank you. We look forward to working with you. April and her team will do everything we can to make this a seamless process. And we share excitement in partnering with you to generate this important information. Thank you.